Sports Intel. I've got my buddy Jeff Isaak on the board here. We're celebrating a few days today, so we like to celebrate the National Day, and we're doing a little bit of a crossover because on Wednesday, when I covered the Sports Project, we celebrated National Beverage Day. That's a big one. I'm glad I was on the air, because we didn't have it on a Monday or Thursday show. And for those of you, it is available on our podcast feed because Rex was able to get it and put it on our feed. But for those of you that didn't listen, one of our regular guests, Dave Dalton, who covers the Pistons for us, had the most delightfully random answer I told Jeff I wouldn't have guessed this in 1,000 guesses.
No.
It wouldn't have mattered. I would have never gotten to it. I don't know what number guess. I'd be dead before the guesses would be completed. And it was Dr. Pepper Zero combined with Strawberry Banana V8 Fusion. And Jeff was nice enough to bring us in a can of each, and we currently each have a cup where we are splitting this combo from Dave Dalton. And what's our review, Jeff? What are we thinking?
It's I like it. I think it's very good.
I think it's pretty good, too. This is the first this is like one of 5 sips of pop that I've had in probably 22 years. Because I stopped drinking pop at 21. My 21st birthday was my last proper one that I actually ordered for myself. I think aside from accidentally maybe taking a swig of somebody's pop, that we get our drinks mixed up and I take a swig of somebody's pop, at a ball game or something or from a restaurant, this is it. This is my first intentional pop in 22 years, and it was worth it.
Yeah.
I like it.
You were way more disciplined than me.
Yeah, we were talking about this at the beginning of the show, or before we went on here, but I have a tendency to be kind of regimented about the things, the clothing. I wear the same clothes, except I do that. Except I got my Jeff Isaak shirt on.
Looks great
today
on you, too.
Because was there a big announcement on set? What was the big announcement?
So the big announcement is we're celebrating our 100th show on June 27th. So we're going to have a VIP party. We're going to bring some listeners in. They can request their song on air in studio. They can get it like behind the scenes tour. We're going to have pizza from my title sponsor, Vito's Pizza.
Nice.
And we'll have Sprecker's root beer. Absolutely.
That's a great combo. That was Jeff's submission. I did say it during the show, but he picked, and he also said he liked Yoo-Hoo, because nobody would pick Yoo-Hoo, and Big G was getting mad at me. He always gets mad at me for one of the paths I go down with the thing of the day. But now, so we're combining National Beverage Day, celebrating Dave Dalton by having his drink. And then Jeff was nice enough to bring in food because it's Eat What You Want Day. And this is a great selection for Eat What You Want Day, I think, Jeff.
I thought about it today, and I'm like, if it's Eat What You Want Day, I'm like, these are so easy to make. And they're good. They're good. And they're buffalo chicken wontons.
I had one before we went on air, and it's delicious.
Yeah,
and I had it with my Dr. Pepper V8. This needs to be a name. I don't know if we call this the drink, because I was telling Dave, do we call this the Dave Dalton, like an Arnold Palmer? This is his combo.
Because it's the triple D, the double D Dalton.
Yeah.
The triple D.
Well, because Arnold Palmer...
Yeah.
He was the one that thought to combine lemonade with iced tea. I mean, I'm sure somebody else thought of it maybe before him, but it got branded to him, and now that's called an Arnold Palmer. I don't have another name for it. People don't go into a restaurant and say half iced tea, half lemonade. They just say Arnold Palmer.
No, the Dave Dalton.
So we need to say the Dave Dalton and then get that started at restaurants. So I had my Dave Dalton drink, the Triple D, with my wonton, and I'm doing well here. So we're celebrating Eat What You Want Day. I'm coming from a West Michigan Sports Commission event, which actually we're going to talk about that with our third guest, Lance Parrish. Very excited to have him on the show. I was hanging out with him at the event, and he was driving back in between, so he should be back home by the time we talk to him at 8:15. But then Mom and I went out for Polish dogs and hot dogs and chili dogs.
Oh,
so I feel
absolutely.
like that was a good way to celebrate Eat What You Want Day. But yeah, we'll have to ask our guests what they would choose. I'm curious of the choices here for Eat. Yeah, Eat What You Want is everything. That's that's the perfect day, because we don't have to say what's your favorite hoagie, what's your favorite sandwich, what's your favorite pie. It's just Eat What You Want. What are you choosing? What's your favorite meal? What's your I mean, this is a grim way to put it, but it's like, what's your death row meal? What's your final meal? And so that's going to be good. We'll be able to talk with Sean Murphy, who will come on and talk about the Pistons at 7:15. We'll talk to him about that, and then we're going to have a baseball heavy show here, Jeff.
I like it.
Zach Serdenik, who does the Erie play-by-play now. He took over for our friend Greg Gagne.
Okay,
and he does the play-by-play by himself, from what I can surmise. He did that whole game. I listened to the game on Saturday so that I could get a feel for how it's going for him there. He used to be in Lakeland, and I don't know if his other guy was out, but he was just literally explaining the game for 3 hours.
See, that's got to be tough, because you mentally have got to be like, I'm still talking like someone's still there.
Exactly.
It's that's tough.
Yeah.
You can't ask questions.
No.
Because if you start answering them, then...
Yeah, he's just a circular conversation with himself. He was layering in information. He was doing analysis. He was doing a great job, but we'll talk to him. He also covers Michigan State on the basketball and football side of things, so we'll have a lot to talk to him about. And then, the great Lance Parrish will be on at 8:15, so we'll talk to him. Jeff and I will have some time in studio. I know you listened to a decent amount of the shows. Did you catch the Thursday show with Shane Graham? Because now this is sweeping the nation, and by the nation I mean now in my life I'm taking straw polls of this, because Shane wanted to discuss this whole red button, blue button thing. Are you familiar with this?
I missed that part. I was at a marketing function for Jethro Thursday out at Axes, and I don't remember what it was. It was Axes and Appetizers. And we were through.
That's a good combo.
Yeah, and I was marketing the station, but I did catch a little bit on the way home, but I did not get the red button, blue button. Do the axes, are they used for the appetizers? Do you like send an axe through like a watermelon, and then you're like, here's your appetizer, it's a watermelon, you just cut through it with an axe? You know what? The next time I'm there, I will suggest that, because that is fantastic. You axe your meal.
Yeah. I kind of turned it into Gallagher there for a minute with the watermelons, but this is So this is a good thing to discuss in the opening segment, and then we can maybe get your answer at the end, because this was foisted upon me in the opening. We were literally going on the air, and he asked me about it. I had not heard of it either, so almost everybody I've talked to hasn't heard of it, but it's apparently a bit of a viral sensation, fascination. That's kind of an age-old ethics, morality.
Okay.
It involves some game theory, the prisoner's dilemma, things like that. But basically, you got two buttons in front of you, and we all of us do in the earth. We have to choose a red button or a blue button. We have to pick one of them. The red button is if over 50% of the people click the red button, then only the people that clicked the red button survive. If over 50% of the people click the blue button, everybody survives. So basically, if you can get the collective to select over 50%, then you're good. You keep everybody around. But if that majority from the red side gets over 50%, then it's just them.
So I just feel like because of movies and James Bond and the president with the red phone, I think the red button would be more popular to push.
Well, it's funny because I want to vote to change the button color because I think red and blue, that there's too much connotation. Obviously, that's the colors. That's the main colors of the main political parties. So there you got that part. You got red, blue pill. You got red pill, blue pill from the Matrix. There's too many things that are red and blue. It needs to be like orange and purple. It needs to be colors that don't really evoke much of anything.
Okay.
Like that it's just random colors. Because if you made it colors that you think of something first off, I feel like there is some that are going to be biased by the color. And they're just going to go, well, I'm going red because red's a powerful color. Or I'm going red because that's my political leaning. Or I'm going red. Red colors evoke different things. I've researched this because I do wear all the same clothing all the time, and I just wear plain color t-shirts.
Oh, yeah.
And there's research out there about blue evokes this certain emotion or black evokes this certain emotion, and we just don't even know, but we're looking at the person and not realizing that because they wore a black shirt, where this is,
Yeah.
So that's something to think on. here. You don't have to get, well, maybe you already picked red. You just picked red because you did the red phone.
Right.
Red. Yeah. So some people are just going to pick the color.
Push the red button when we were little. Think
Yeah,
about that.
that's true.
You don't push the red button. All right.
Yeah.
So I'm going to push the red button.
There you go. See, that's why it can't be red. This is why, because you wouldn't have the same issue if it was like purple.
I think you should blindfold everybody, and they get 2 buttons in front of them. Then they're really random.
They're just playing whack-a-mole with the buttons. Oh, why did we have this apocalyptic event? Because we played whack-a-mole with the buttons. I like this. We had like this very formal discussion, like we were Stephen A. and Skip Bayless, although we didn't fight like that.
You guys were way more polite.
It was more...
And not nearly as annoying.
Well, yeah, see, it didn't get fun. It immediately got fun this way. Yeah, I had to be more like Max Kellerman, which I didn't like. He was like the undesirable one from when he took over First Take and he was with Stephen A. Nobody liked Max Kellerman. He made good points, but nobody liked him. That's kind of how I felt.
Because he made good points.
Yeah.
They want to be entertained.
Yeah, he wasn't like, he was just serious about it. But yeah, so there you go. That was going to be a tease for the final segment where we already solved that. So,
right.
But why didn't you choose the blue button? What if it was Honolulu blue? Would you have chosen it if it was Honolulu blue?
Now that's interesting. Now that I would have to think about.
Yeah. I feel like then you'd want to hit the blue button.
Yeah, the Honolulu blue.
People are getting into the Honolulu blue here.
Of course, I figured if the Lions, you'd have to do it before the season started. If you did it after the season and they didn't make the playoffs, nobody's pushing the
button,
blue, and we're all dead.
Thanks a lot, Lions, for having.
And then, of course, we blame the Lions.
Yeah,
they killed us. They finally killed us.
They had an over 500 season, but they still killed us in the red button, Honolulu blue button.
They're just not good enough.
Yeah, Kool-Aid red versus Honolulu blue. We lost. Thanks a lot, Lions. Well, that's good. Full circle. See, that's, in my estimation, better coverage of the red button, blue button debate than we had on Thursday's show.
Wow.
When we had like the full, like this 15-minute debate and there was all these good points. I liked this one better because then we got into the colorways of the Lions. Yeah. And then Kool-Aid. I like it when if it's Kool-Aid red, then a lot of people are going to pick it. Or like Hawaiian Punch red. Yeah. Those are good reds too. We don't really have any reds in the market. As far as the Detroit teams, so we can't play into that. Red Wings, obviously.
The Red Wings,
yeah, but I don't. But
of course, if everybody wanted the Red Wings, we'd all die too.
Yeah,
because
even less people are going to pick that button at this point in time. We might have a crossover to sports here. We're going to have to figure that out. But yeah, I like that debate. Well, we won't ask Sean about the red button, blue button debate. We will ask him what he wants to eat for Eat What You Want Day. It's also Hostess Cupcake Day as well. So that's kind of the other day we could celebrate. But Eat What You Want is too good.
It is.
But if somebody chooses Hostess Cupcake on Eat What You Want Day and it's both of those days, I feel like they got to win a prize or something.
Okay.
We're going to send them a package of V8 Fusion.
Yes, we'll send them a V8 and Dr. Pepper Zero.
A Dave Dalton. This one's for you, Dave. We'll be talking your Pistons after the break with Sean Murphy. Stick with us. You're listening to Sports Intel on Jethro FM. Sean, so we got a big one today for the National Day. Sometimes we have to kind of shoehorn things in. This is wide open. This is National Eat What You Want Day. So hopefully you did that today. But what's Sean Murphy's favorite meal?
Oh boy, you are starting out with a big question, but I respect it, man. If you're going with what my favorite meal is, there's something to be said about like getting your favorite pizza from your favorite pizza place. I'm not too complicated of a guy, but there's something to be said about a meat lover's pizza from a good local pizza shop. That's just absolutely sublime. So if I ever need a meal that I know for a fact I'm going to be satisfied with, that's always a good go-to.
Well, you famously moved to Detroit in one of the most read messages on X, posts on X, because you were famously confused with the Atlanta Braves catcher, I believe, and then it went viral.
Correct.
And so your move was the most publicized move of all time on X, and so you've settled into Detroit now. Have you found a local joint to to get said pizza from?
I'm still searching. I'm still looking out there. There's definitely maybe there's too many options. It's being paralyzed by the amount of choices that could definitely be a bit of an issue. But man, some of the Detroit style places out here obviously are fantastic. So it's a good problem to have. Let's just say that.
Paralysis by analysis. I get it.
Exactly.
That happens. That happens. Well, so the other thing we're doing in studio here, because it's kind of Pistons related in a roundabout way, is Dave Dalton, who I don't know if you're familiar with, but he has the Pistons Fanatic podcast on YouTube. He is on the show every once in a while, and we had National Beverage Day when I covered our other show on Wednesday, and his favorite beverage is Dr. Pepper Zero combined with Strawberry Banana V8 Fusion. So we're also having that during the interview. So any erratic behavior, I'm going to blame on that.
Right.
Hey, that's totally valid, and I appreciate the honesty, but that sounds fantastic, so I'm happy for you.
Yeah, so there you go. But let's get into the Pistons talk here. Jeff and I are excited to talk some Pistons with you because, like I said, I don't think you don't seem like the type that would have really given up hope. I was in the same, even when they were down 3-1, I was going, I'm really not that worried. I think things are going to regress to the mean here a little bit. I think, one of the worst pull-up shooters in the NBA hitting 6 threes or whatever in a game isn't necessarily going to happen, or Anthony Black being really hot off the bench, or pretty much, a lot of the Pistons underperforming at the same time. This stuff isn't going to happen, and sure enough, they did take off. Now, Franz got hurt, and we need to mention that because that was a big part of it. I give credence to the Pistons injury, so we've got to do the same to the other side. But I'm curious how you took in that series, and then we'll cover the Cavs series here.
Yeah, it was fascinating because I'm not going to lie, when they did go down 3-1, especially if Franz Wagner was going to be healthy, for the Magic, there was a moment where I did think that we were going to be talking about a Pistons first-round exit. And the reason why wasn't really because, it wasn't really necessarily Orlando was in this incredible, shooting display. It wasn't really even necessarily it was just super fluky things that were happening in some respects. The real problems were, towards the beginning of the series was, and, I asked Danis Jenkins, because, literally we were sitting there on Thursday night, the Pistons are up 2-0, and literally 6 days before they were down 24 points at halftime in Orlando. It's like, well, what changed? And he said, they came out and they set the tone and they punched us in the mouth. And, they let us have it early. And I think they recognize, even though, obviously they've been the ones that have been, setting the tone physically all season, and their physicality and defense is what gotten them up to this point. Everyone's playing with that, with a higher sense of urgency and intensity when the postseason comes around, because that's when the pressure's on. That's when, that's when the real consequence is there. And so obviously, it is unfortunate to see a player go down, like a Franz for Orlando. But on top of that, you look at guys like Asar Thompson, who had one of the greatest defensive playoff series I've ever seen. Jim Costa posted a tweet that the only non-bigs to ever have 16-plus steals and 16-plus blocks in a playoff series are LeBron James twice and Asar Thompson. End of list. And he's doing that at 22 years old and looking like the reincarnation of Dennis Rodman with his elevated rebounding as well. He's just been a revelation this postseason. And then Cade having, that incredible 4 or 5 game, stretch down the end of down the end there in that Orlando series. And ever since then, I think you can make the legitimate argument. It's been him and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander are the guys who have been the best players in the world this postseason. And so, the fact that you're getting all those things from the Pistons, you have to be encouraged by what you've seen. And even though it was a difficult loss, obviously, over the weekend against Cleveland, I still think you have to feel phenomenal about where you're at, because there's a very realistic chance we're looking at the first conference finals for the Pistons in 20 years.
I feel the same way, especially because the Cleveland game, the first game in Cleveland, and not to minimize it, Cleveland played a good game and they deserved the win, and let's give them the credit and give them their flowers. But I also think a bunch of things happened in that game that would be hard to replicate in the second game in Cleveland. And if you just change a couple, you're getting a Pistons victory. Like Harden being vintage Harden down the stretch, that's a lot of load for Mitchell to carry, especially with the tough defense of having Thompson on him. Not a lot of the auxiliary players played great from the Pistons side of things, aside from Paul Reed, which thankfully on that show on Wednesday, we did a whole segment on how Paul Reed should play more, and we were prescient before that game. But yeah, there's a lot of things that should return to the mean, and in the Cavs case, probably regress a little bit, and in the Pistons case, you're probably not talking 8 turnovers for Cade. You're talking a little snappier rotation with guys that are contributing a little bit more, a little bit better shooting because they were below their average, which isn't high in the first place. So there's a bunch of things that could change. But yeah, you give the Cavs their credit, but I just don't think, especially with that team. And we Jeff and I talked about this on the show, but the big guys being not necessarily the hardiest. I like Allen, I like Mobley, but standing up for a 6-7 game series against the Pistons, and with an aging Harden, Mitchell, it just seems tough. We'll see. It's not that they can't do it, but it was odd to me that they were favored kind of going into most of this until the Pistons took off to a lead. And I think Jeff kind of felt the same way.
Yeah, and the most encouraging thing that I've seen in the first 3 games is we still haven't played a full 60 minutes. That we... Like not a perfect game, because obviously that's almost impossible. But we have not played our best game yet.
Right.
We haven't.
Yeah.
And if we put that together, it's Pistons in 5, but tonight's a big one.
Yeah, no question. I mean, there's a massive difference psychologically between being up 3-1 and being tied 2-2. And, like with Cleveland, kind of like you said, there are a lot of things there where, again, you do got to give the credit of their role players did step up at home. They are, it's interesting. They won all their games in the first round at home. They've only won, thus far at home, during this series. So, if it truly does come down to the home court, advantage battle, Cleveland's likely to lose that one, just statistically speaking. But on top of that, like you said, the Pistons didn't play their best game. They shot themselves in the foot so many times, and yet they were still in position to win the game down the stretch if they executed properly. If they cut down on some of those turnovers, those gimme turnovers that you just can't have, in the final stretch. And on top of that, little things in the first half, they had 12 offensive rebounds, but only 9 second chance points. It's if they actually execute on some of those little things, we're talking about the Pistons being up 3-0 right now. And so, I know Cleveland, I'm sure they're telling themselves a lot of the same things after those first couple of games. Oh, if we do this, we win. But, the reality of it is the reason why, the worry isn't really, ultimately there is because I think all of us would probably agree. I just don't see the Cleveland Cavaliers being able to match or exceed the physicality and set the tone that way with this Pistons team throughout the series. And that's really the only way you're going to beat them. So I just don't see that.
Exactly. And they really faced one of the more physical teams in the Eastern Conference already in the Orlando Magic. So it's probably an improvement in the amount of talent in maybe the expertise of these Cleveland Cavaliers players, but it's not an improvement on the intensity and the defense and the toughness. And like you said, I think those are the things that, unless you've got such a high level of those other things to exceed Detroit's toughness, you need to meet them at least at that toughness threshold and then also exceed them from a skill standpoint.
Yeah, and Donovan Mitchell is excellent, but it's the Cleveland also needs to have, they also need their guys to be the best players in this series. And it's I'm sorry, I just don't see a world where Donovan Mitchell is going to outplay Cade Cunningham consistently throughout the series, especially both sides of the floor. What we've been seeing, from Cade scoring wise, obviously, the 3-point shooting has just gotten a lot more, reliable. I know it was a rough, like game 3. And, like Cleveland's kind of been a team that is able to provide some shooting problems because for all the, overall physicality issues they have, especially in the interior, they do have guys in Dean Wade and Jalen Tyson who do a really good job of guarding Cade Cunningham. But he's still been able to find a lot of his looks, obviously, and, still overall been pretty good. But like he's second in scoring average this playoffs to Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. And so, everything that he's been doing, I just, a lot of times in the postseason, it does come down to who has the best player, and the Pistons are going to be winning that battle in a lot of series right now.
And that's why in the first series with Wagner going out, him guarding Cade was situationally a very good thing for Orlando because he had the size, he could keep up with them, and the other matchups didn't really suffer. They were able to shift guys around. Suggs is a good defender. They have a pretty good front court, pretty solid front court. With the Cavs, you still have to work around the fact that your top two offensive players are those two undersized guards that have to guard somebody as well. So even if you got Dean Wade on a Cade, then you've got somewhat favorable matchups for whoever else is out there, Duncan Robinson, Asar Thompson, because you've got to put those guards, especially Harden, who's never been known for his defense, on somebody.
Yeah, and Harden, especially in game 2, in that second half, he allowed the Pistons to go 7 for 7 on drives, against him in that game, which is I think I heard someone say that was like the first time in the since stats have been counted that's happened in the postseason on a player. It's just there are very exploitable matchups there to be had. It's just for one, obviously can they find them consistently, but two, can they get guys outside of Cade that can join the party that can help make that happen? Because we've seen it is normal for role players to rise and fall based on whether they're at home or whether they're on the road. But Detroit does need someone to be able to bring that. And that's kind of been a major X factor in the postseason thus far, and a big difference between wins and losses. When they haven't had guys like Danis Jenkins who have been able to get it going, they've had a hard time getting a win. But when they have gotten major contributions from those guys, the scoreboards look pretty distant. So that's going to be a pretty big X factor I'll be looking out for tonight for sure.
I imagine Harden turning to somebody in the locker room going, "Hey, I set a record," and then putting his hand up to high five people, and they're like, "No, that's not that kind of record. It's not a good record to have."
He set multiple records that night. There was another stat from ESPN Insights where he broke the tie with Bob Cousy for the most games with 25% or less field goal percentage in postseason history. That's not what you want to be known for.
Exactly. Well, we got to take a break, but I want to come back and talk about kind of the team building aspect of this because the Cavs have been favored above the Pistons for most of the season, but it's intriguing to see them match up in the playoffs. So we'll come back with Sean Murphy of the From Half Court podcast after the break. Stick with us. You're listening to Sports Intel on Jethro FM. We talked right around the time that Kevin Durant was traded, and we were talking about kind of making the big swing. And the Cavs are one of those teams that made one of these kind of bigger swings. I mean, they've kind of progressively done that. They obviously did that with Mitchell, but that was doing it with a younger player and consolidating assets. Then now they did it with Harden, which there's a lot of window talk around the Lions. Jeff and I don't really care for that, but it does, especially in the NBA, potentially affect your window when you're talking about going for a Harden. He obviously he's aged pretty well by NBA standards, but he's not got a ton of years left. But I'm just curious how you take in kind of this Cleveland Cavaliers team, because they're doing something that the Pistons could have, and some Pistons fans kind of pushed for. They wanted Durant. I heard some mutterings about Leonard around the trade deadline. This is of fans, not of the team actually wanting to do this. But I've always been in favor of doing what they're doing, which is build up that core, then kind of make some moves around the margins to improve. Don't necessarily consolidate your assets unless it really makes sense. But now we have a matchup of these two teams where one is very young and trending up, and the other is kind of seeing their window maybe dwindling here a little bit.
Yeah, and it's interesting because not only, like Cleveland, they took like a very, like somewhat calculated risk when you look at what they did with the Darius Garland, for James Harden trade, because one could argue not only, did they, go out and get someone that's like 10 years older, but like they went out and they shrunk their own window. Like they said, like it's now or never with that type of move that they made. And, there's kind of like the expectation, like the wink, wink expectation whenever James Harden gets moved, there's always like a contract that follows. But, based on, like he's had like one really good performance here, in this series, but otherwise he's had almost as many games, like as he's played, like where like just about half of them he's had, like more turnovers and field goals made. And so, and the other thing with Cleveland is they are the only team in the NBA right now that's in the second apron, which, like the second apron and the salary cap world, what it essentially means is you're, like super expensive, you're over the salary cap, you're paying in the luxury tax, and you can't really do much to actually upgrade or improve. There's a lot of restrictions on the type of deals you can make. So for all intents and purposes, this is your team unless you shed significant salary. And they haven't necessarily proven to be good enough to, to command that, especially when like one of the big bets that they made was that Evan Mobley was going to be a lot better than he's been. And a lot of people have talked about if this Cleveland team is going to be what they want it to be, Evan Mobley would have to be the best player, within the construct of this team. And that just hasn't materialized. Donovan Mitchell's a great player, but the farthest he's gotten in his career is the second round. And so, it's very much looking like that could be the same case for them. And then you could even look at the previous matchup in the playoffs here against the Orlando Magic. The Magic went and traded 4 first-round picks for Desmond Bane to be where the Pistons are right now. And they're not. They're home. They were in the play-in, and you could point out health, you could point out a lot of these things, but I think you can also look back to the fact that, and to me, it's like, you talk about the windows thing with the Lions. It's like, it always comes back to, as long as like you have those franchise cornerstone pieces, like the Cades of the world, as long as you believe in like the Jared Goffs, he could be a Super Bowl caliber quarterback, like you have a chance. Your window is always open when you have someone like that. And so like, yeah, the Pistons could very well still go out and make their swing at some point here soon. But what they've seen in the postseason here thus far is they already have enough to go very deep in the postseason. And that pragmatic, that slower approach is sometimes like the better move, because you can be like these teams like Orlando and Cleveland where you went out and made these massive deals where it just hasn't materialized the way that you've wanted it to. Even look at Philadelphia, all the splashy moves they've made all like over the years. They're second round merchants too. So I understand why fans want to see it. I appreciate the fun that comes with those types of transactions, but at the same time, the Pistons are already quite successful where they're at.
Exactly. A lot of great points in there, but one of the things that it made me think of is you're talking about Mobley, and I've always liked Mobley. I like his playing style. I think he's kind of underrated in the grand scheme of things, but like you said, there was a higher expectation there, especially when accompanied by some of the other asset consolidation that happened. But there's been a large discourse on a couple players because the other players in this young core that are going to hopefully factor into the future are Ausar Thompson and Jalen Duren, among others, but I'm going to focus on them for this bit because Thompson is obviously a premier defender. You highlighted that and what he did in that first series and what he's done all season, and that he's really kind of in the category of Defensive Player of the Year finalist. But I think it's hard for people to appreciate his game and the impact that he has in the game because he's not just out there scoring. That's easy to compute. That's easy to look at the box score and understand. If you watch him play 82 games plus the playoffs, then you understand it a little bit better like we do. But it makes me think of Mobley because Thompson's already kind of trending. Yes, he plays a slightly different position, but as far as his defensive prowess, he really has, to a degree, a higher offensive upside right now as far as trajectory than a Mobley, because we haven't really, Mobley's had a year or two more to figure that out, and he hasn't done that yet. Whereas Thompson, sure, we focus on the jumper, but there's a lot of other things offensively that he offers that he's kind of showcasing in the playoffs too.
Yeah, and I think Ausar's done like a really good job of finding ways to still be effective. And, like, I think, like where like a lot of guys like the Ben Simmons of the world like have gotten themselves in trouble is they didn't adapt their game. They saw the ways that teams are defending them, and they just couldn't find ways to still be effective. Whereas like Isaak has gotten really good at playing on the baseline. He's someone who's like more than willing to be like a screener. He's someone who can handle the ball and be a playmaker and like an effective passer. And even we've seen the flashes of him working on the jump shot, and we'll see if that ever like comes to fruition. That is something you can use game to game, but it's definitely an interesting comparison because, like you said, it's like those are two kind of guys where it's like like defensively we see. We see the impact, like it is tangible, and people question, okay, but when's that going to translate into being like that, like transcendent offensive star? And it's like, yeah, like the Pistons, like they would definitely love if like a star could become like a like a 15 or 20 plus point a game night guy on top of like what he's doing on the other side of the ball. But it's like the truth of the matter is like I think he can still be like more than effective if like all those things don't necessarily like come to fruition. And like unlike Evan Mobley, like I don't think Asar is going to be getting like a supermax contract where he's going to be cast to be like that premier number one option every single night. If he could be that second, like a super reliable second or third option, that's great. But right now it's like, okay, he's just the best perimeter defender in the world, which is like definitely something that you don't take as like a consolation prize.
Exactly. And then that other piece in kind of those, because we're talking about that slow build, the young core, and obviously he's very young and presumably has a lot of growing that is in his profile here as far as his game goes, especially offensively, but maybe even defensively too, which is scary to think about because he can't.
Only 22.
Yeah, I mean, because you would say, well, how much better can he get defensively? I'm just looking at kind of his instincts and his athletic profile that can grow, and so 22 he can grow. The other guy that's in that mix is obviously Jalen Duren, who's fallen under some heat a little bit in the playoffs. I feel like we're kind of going, what have you done for me lately? He had a very successful season, and then people are seeing the playoff numbers. There's also rumors that he might be a little hobbled too. But is that affecting your judgment of his of his inclusion in this, or is it just, hey, he's a young guy, he's going to have to improve here, and he's going to be able to improve?
Yeah, I definitely think these are some of these, like those first like licks, those like harsh realities that come with being high on a team scouting report when you talk about like preparing for a postseason. Jalen Duren did a lot of great things offensively during the regular season, but it became pretty evident that he was going to have to tighten up some of those things for it to actually translate, to postseason play, especially when you go up against some of those, better defensive teams. And, like Orlando in particular was a really tough matchup for him, especially because they were so physical and had so many guys who could pack the paint and genuinely affect like what he was trying to do. Whereas here with like a Cleveland matchup, it's still really hard going up against Jared Allen and Evan Mobley, like two all defensive caliber guys. Evan Mobley won Defensive Player of the Year last year, but, he's, like Kenny Atkinson said it himself before game 2. He said, Jalen Duren is like, pound for pound, like he's probably the strongest player in the NBA. And, like the way he's able to set the tone physically and even like defensively, he's had a lot of matchups where he's really where he's really stepped up, and the rebounding's gotten a lot better as like the postseason's gotten along too. So it's like, for me, I think he still found ways to contribute, still found ways to affect, to impact winning positively. But then there's also the nights where, like in Game 3, where like he had like some really, really rough offensive foul calls, during that like stretch in the second quarter where Cleveland was really able to balloon the lead, going into halftime. And there's those little things where it's like, if he's not scoring, sometimes it looks like he can be taken out of the game. But it's like, if he continues to, like do the things where he knows he can set the tone physically, where he knows that he could be a high-level rebounder, where he knows that he could be a really effective rim protector if he's just locked into those areas and not just worry about the offense, I think, like the rest will come. And, I think he has shown some real resolve and some real poise as the offseason, as the postseason's gone on. And in that Game 7 in particular, I thought he played really well.
Exactly. And another guy that shows a lot of upside as far as skills go. He's got a pretty good handle for a big man. He's got the ability to pass kind of more so than you'd think for his size, and along with all those other traditional traits that hopefully he can continue to build on. We got to get you out of here so you can watch the game, but what do you think the key to tonight is for the Pistons, and make sure to tell people where they can follow you as well?
Yeah, I think the number one key is going to be limiting limiting Cleveland shooting, and keeping this a close game throughout. Because I think if they had to spend less time digging themselves out of a hole that they've gotten themselves in, I think that would be something that would be like a significant advantage for them. If they can keep it close and keep Cleveland uncomfortable, I think that obviously just goes in their favor.
Sports Intel with Ryan Walsh is brought to you by
Collectible Insurance Services, Eric Hall Aesthetic and General Dentistry, Calder Financial, Grand Management Group, Rydan Investments, Encore Business Group, Jim Hegland of JH Realty, Williams Chiropractic, I-Core, the West Michigan Sports Commission.
Sports Intel with Ryan Walsh.
Stay informed and stay vigilant.
We saw each other at the West Michigan Sports Commission event earlier today. It was fun to hang out with him. He did a great job as the ambassador to the Tigers and in his speech there. And I liked it, Lance, because you were hopeful about the Tigers. So I wanted to highlight that to the audience. But as you may or may not remember, we celebrate the National Day on the show, and this is a good one. I'm really curious about this one. It's National Eat What You Want Day. So what's Lance Parrish's favorite meal?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, it used to be pasta. Anything pasta. I was a big pasta fan, but I grew up in Southern California, so it became between pasta and Mexican food. Anything Mexican I loved. Now I think I'm good with a nice steak and whatever goes with it. But I usually don't turn too much down.
I feel like that's a solid answer. You can't go wrong with the steak or with not turning too much down. That's
a great answer.
That's also something I tend to do as well. But no, it was good to see you today. I wanted to talk about the Sports Commission event because that was a great event. They opened, they're a sponsor on the show. So for people that are tuning in for the West Michigan Sports Commission side of things, they did the ribbon cutting at the softball field and the new plaza here, and Lance was one of the main speakers. And I thought it was a great event, Lance, and another kind of cornerstone of the sports community you helped usher in for Grand Rapids here.
Well, it was a great event because of what it represented. And, as I mentioned in my little speech at the event, that place is so nice, and it's pretty much state of the art any way you look at it. I mean, the facilities for the men's baseball, the women's softball, all the other fields for every age group. They've got I don't even know all what they have there. I know they just built a whole bunch of pickleball courts, and they've got trails and you name anything you want to do activity-wise. And I just think that it's such a great opportunity for primarily young adults that are into athletics of every kind imaginable, and for older folks like myself that are, for whatever reason, there seems to be a pickleball craze going on around the country, and they're getting geared up for that. Evidently, in the talks today, it was mentioned that they were going to have a big pickleball tournament there in September, so that's something to look forward to. But I know some people that are pretty close to me that play that absolutely fell in love with it. I have not dipped into that yet. I'm just more into hitting the golf ball and walking around. But, I can't say enough about that facility. And as you remember, I mentioned the fact that I have 11 grandkids, and they all play sports. And for me to be able to go and watch them, just like every other parent or grandparent, to go to a beautiful facility like that that's kept up and, all the amenities you could ask for. I mean, what more could you ask for your kids or grandkids? So I just think it's a great thing for, the state of Michigan and especially the community.
Exactly. And you highlighted it well, especially in comparison to what resources you probably had when you were growing up, because obviously we didn't have those kinds of things when you were on the come up, and you made use, you even mentioned it in your speech, but you made use of the sticks and the balls and whatever you found in the neighborhood. But that was your equipment in your field, more so than these nice fields. So it's nice that we've evolved to this.
Absolutely. And I'm of the mindset, I'm probably going to be frowned on for saying this, but anything you can do to get your kids or grandkids away from the computer or their phones or whatever for a little while anyway, to get outside and get involved in some physical activity is only going to benefit them. And just personally speaking, I think sports is a great developer of kids, not only physically but it develops a team attitude that is, I think, irreplaceable. You learn how to work with your peers and other kids your own age. It develops character. One of the great things that I felt like throughout my career, I met a lot of guys and played under a lot of managers and coaches that were great character developers, and I think I benefited a great deal from that. So, and I'm sure that's the case now. So every kid that gets involved in a team sport, I think, has the opportunity to grow from that. And I as well as a lot of other, again, parents and grandparents welcome that.
Well, if you get any flack for that, they can come through me, because that's not, I totally agree with you. And I think it's a great statement, because I was just reading, actually, even the video game part, like when I was young, you had Super Mario where you had to fight all these fireballs and dragons, and you got 3 lives, and if you lost your 3 lives, you were done. You had to start over. You had to, you weren't, there was no dopamine loop, there was no continuation, you just had to start over. And now the games are built so that you can just keep running around and get that dopamine loop. And either way, kids should be outside. But I remember that when I was young, that we pretty much only did that when it was raining and we were stuck inside the house. We usually were just outside unless we had to be inside. But yeah, you kind of had a fixed amount of time, because it was like, okay, yeah, I died. Time to go outside now. The Koopa ate me as Mario or whatever. And now I'm going back outside. And it's great to have these opportunities, because you must look at it and say, yeah, look at the opportunities that these kids have for them. We don't need to be playing Fortnite. We need to be out there on the fields and taking advantage, because I don't think people understand that butterfly effect that sports has with developing all those traits you were talking about.
Absolutely. And I was an outdoors person. When I got up in the morning and if I didn't have to go to school, if it was in the summertime, let's say, when I was free to do whatever I wanted, as soon as I got up, I was out. I was gone. I was doing something, either hiking around in the hills around where I lived in California, or, playing a pickup game with some of the guys out in the street or down in the schoolyard or something. I loved being outside. I loved, being involved in whatever I was involved in. And, I realized it goes with the territory, and, I didn't have an opportunity to play computer games or Fortnite or whatever. And I just know that it becomes addicting for these kids. They start playing it, and you compete to get to certain levels, and I mean they'll play it all day long if you let them. So it's either one or the other, and I know they enjoy playing it because it's competitive in its own way. But every kid needs to get outside and do something physical outside and get a little sunshine and touch the grass once in a while.
Amen. That's touching the grass. That's great advice from Lance Parrish. But we want to talk to you a little bit about those guys that are touching the grass here and playing for the Tigers and playing in the major leagues in general. Because Jeff was mentioning this to me before we got the segment started, but I think he's got some questions for you about kind of how the game's evolved and what's happening so far this year with Major League Baseball and the Tigers as a whole.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about the American League. Have you ever seen anything like this with the run differential? Like right now, the Tigers, even within their struggles, are still the third best team in the American League in run differential. There's only 4 that are in the positive. They're in the black. Everyone else is in the red. Have you ever seen anything like this in the American League this far? We're 40 games into the season now.
Probably not. But every year is a little bit different. You never know what each year is going to bring. I don't want to be critical of the whole analytics movement, but, I thought with all the innovations of the new technologies that they have, that we'd be seeing a lot more offensive production. A lot more guys hitting 300, being more productive that way. And for me, even though I'm not being critical of analytics at all, it just seems like no matter what you throw at players these days, basically you're getting the same results that you got in my generation and the generation before. Obviously there's a few guys that always stand out, but, as a whole, I was expecting to see a lot more production, and I'm just not. I'm not really seeing it. So, why that is, I have no idea. They got away from the shifts and all that, and I think they've kind of calmed down on the whole launch angle approach for the hitters, and they're trying to get guys to. AJ does a great job of playing small ball on occasion, and I appreciate that. It's just not everybody getting up there trying to whack a home run. So. I enjoy watching the way that he manages a game. But, I don't have an answer for that, and I don't know if anybody ever will have an answer for that.
No, it's one of the conundrums of the game right now, because one of the things that we were talking about earlier today that I told you I wanted to talk to you about is obviously the catchers, because no better person to ask about the catchers. And I really think it's a great duo. I know we've talked about them before, kind of when they were a little bit in reverse roles. Rogers was more so the starter when we talked about them, and then Dingler was kind of coming up and improving and learning from Jake. But now obviously Dingler's taken over that starting role. Rogers still factors in from a leadership standpoint. But I wanted to talk about them. But then I bring up Dingler's numbers, and obviously he's he started out pretty hot and then he's gone back down. It's small sample size. He'll be in good shape, I'm sure, as the season goes on. But it has to be weird for you to look at these numbers too of these catchers, because just in general the numbers have changed, and the way we have to take them in has changed a little bit.
Well, yes. I still maintain that Jake Rogers is a great asset to the Tigers. He's a tremendous defensive catcher, and I see very little, if anything, to be critical of him about behind the plate. He does a great job, mechanically, with all the framing stuff. And I don't even know how framing, to be honest with you, comes into play anymore with that new ABS system. But, he does a great job. Dingler does a great job. Obviously, the difference is Dingler, has got a little bit stronger offensive numbers, and he's got a little bit more potential, I think, offensively. So, naturally the nod's going to go to him to get more playing time. But to have a backup like Jake Rogers, realistically, you can't expect him to do a whole lot offensively. I mean, if he helps you out a little bit here and there, great. But he's primarily there to give Dingler a little bit of a break and to do a great job defensively, which he does. I don't think they lose anything by putting him behind the plate when it comes to his defensive work. He's got a great arm. He throws well. He blocks balls well. They both do. So, I've said before, I think that, we probably have the strongest 1-2 punch catching-wise in baseball, and I'll stick with that. I realize people could be critical of Rogers that, he really doesn't hit enough or blah, blah, blah. Well, it's like, okay, fine. You can say that. But and I also think that, Dingler, it'd be nice if he could get above 300 and stay there. But, baseball's tough, and if you watch most guys, they're kind of up and they're down and they get hot and then they cool off. And, he's hit a little bit of a lull. He's down in the valley right now, but I fully expect him to bounce back and start raising that average again. The great thing is he's still being productive. He's got, 6 home runs and 25 5 RBIs. I don't know exactly how many he's got, but those are pretty good production numbers for right now. So he starts picking up a little bit of an average, and he'll be right where he wants to be.
I'm glad you said that, a lot of that, because that's kind of where I was thinking you would go with it, because obviously your opinion about the catchers and about baseball in general is much more valuable than mine. But that's kind of how I feel in general. When people ask me who my favorite Tiger is, yeah, I mean, I like covering all of them. I like all of them, but I usually, if I'm forced to pick one, it's Jake Rogers. I think he's like the invisible hand of this team, going back to the economics term where that's what moves the markets and the different shifts in supply and demand. That's how I view Jake Rogers, because whether he's out there or not, he's impacting this team, and you can speak to that from kind of a locker room standpoint. But the knowledge and his steady demeanor, his sportsmanship, all those things that you talked about with these young guys, I feel like Jake Rogers is a great example of that. And now we're seeing it with his impact on what has been his primary pupil in Dylan Dingler, who, yes, there's no insult to Jake. He's probably a little bit more athletically gifted. He's got a great build. He's got a lot of tools, but he's also got a lot of smarts as well, and Jake has helped him maximize those. So I agree with you, and I think we're kind of we're missing the fact that we're not understanding how good these two are behind the plate, because there's so much that the rest of us that are watching the games don't understand really what the catcher is doing, all the things that you guys do to improve the pitching staff, improve the framing, improve all of that throughout the game, both on the field and off.
Well, I mean, realistically, there's no question about that. I mean, it was impressed upon me at a very early point in my career that your primary job is to lead our pitching staff and to do the very best job that you can do defensively. Stop the opposition's running game, help your pitcher, do a good job receiving the ball so you give the umpire a good look, block balls in the dirt, the whole 9 yards. And if you're capable of doing that, then you're an asset to the ball club. If you do anything offensively, that's a plus. And from my own personal opinion, I was a little selfish in that regard, because I always wanted to do good offensively. I consider myself an offensive player as well, and I wanted to contribute. And if I didn't have a good day offensively, I used to probably show it more early on. But I had a few guys sit down and talk to me, and after that, I probably held it inside a little bit more than I had previously. But I still cared enough that I wanted to contribute offensively. I wanted to be a good offensive player. But I also knew and I also understood that my primary job was to do the very best job I could do behind the plate defensively. So I concentrated on that a lot. And, hopefully I did a good job with the guys that I worked with. And, that was always my objective. I've always said, I'm back there. I pay attention to the hitters. I pay attention to the situations. I try to see what each individual hitter's doing, if he's, stepping in the bucket or he's diving, towards the plate or whatever he's doing, so that I could be, a step ahead of him and calling pitches. Now, all I did was make suggestions. And that's all any catcher does, is make suggestions. There was only one time in my career when I was with the Tigers anyway, and for that matter, any other team, but the Tigers were the ones that kind of took the reins on that for a short period of time, when Roger Craig decided that, he and Sparky both, that they were going to call the pitches for our pitching staff for a period of time. And, that was, it came out in, the publications at the time, the newspaper and whatever baseball magazines, because it became a thing that more people became aware of. And, I questioned why we were doing it when Sparky made a comment. I probably mentioned this to you before, but, I read a quote that he had in either in the newspaper or a magazine or something, that either we have the dumbest pitchers in baseball, or there's another problem. And I took that other problem to mean me. So I stomped into his office and wanted him to explain that, and he did. He said, "You know what?" And the explanation he gave really made a lot of sense to me. You know, we had a lot of young pitchers on our staff, and he said, you know, if any of these guys are going to be successful at this level, they have to be able to throw something other than their fastball when they're behind in the count. This is the major leagues. If you can't throw an off-speed pitch, a curveball, or a changeup or slider, whatever, when you're behind in the count and throw it effectively, then you're never going to have any success at this level. And he says, I sit here and watch every time they get behind the count, all they want to throw is fastballs. So we're taking the option out of their hands, and Roger's going to call the pitches. He's going to force them to do that. And I go, well, you know, I mean, I understand it. I can't argue that. And it actually, I think, worked the way that they wanted it to. So, again, you know, in any other game, and, you know, the way things go now, most catchers, if not every catcher, they sit back there, they try to pay attention to the scouting reports, the game situation, you know, what a hitter might be doing that he's able to pick up, and they'll call pitches accordingly. But the pitcher always has the option of shaking him off and going to something else. And all my hopes were always that I could get on the same page with them, where they would trust me enough to go with me and throw what I was calling. And if we did, you know, that was a great reward for me. It made me feel good that, you know, I had gained their trust that way.
It's a great lesson in the nuances of baseball, because I'm always interested in those small things that have they're kind of force multipliers and have a large effect on the greater game as a whole. But really appreciate you joining the show, Lance. Appreciate your time and your insights, and it was good to see you today. And I hope to have you back on the show soon, and we'll get an update hopefully when the Tigers are back on the upswing here.
You bet. Well, great seeing you, and anytime.
All right. Thanks, Lance. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Thanks to Lance Parrish. Appreciate him coming on. Great stuff on the nuances of catching and
awesome.
and how to call a game. Those are things that are very interesting to me, because it's such a pivotal part of the game, but people, I think, underrate it because they can't understand it.
Yeah, and it's great to hear, like, back Sparky Anderson knew that you had to throw something other than the fastball when you get behind the count, and it's more relevant today than it's ever been.
Oh, yeah.
Because Sparky was so far ahead. You know, he was just so brilliant.
Well, and there's so many things that in the modern day, we've talked about those adjustments with Zach, but it's like in the modern day, sometimes you just got to go back to some of those old flares of wisdom from guys like Sparky Anderson and Bobby Cox, R.I.P., guys like that were ahead of their time to a degree. But yeah, great stuff. We'll come back with Jeff in studio and check in on the Pistons game. I just put it on my computer, so we got to check in on that. Stick with us. You're listening to Sports Intel on Jethro FM. On our Dave Dalton drink, I haven't made it through much more of mine because now I've been reminded why I don't drink pop, which is I'm having some issues with it coming back up because I'm not used to anything with bubbles in it, so that's a little precarious on air. I also got the information that it's 2/3 Dr. Pepper and 1/3 V8 Strawberry Banana Fusion from the namesake of the drink. That would have been too much. I don't want to. I think it was good the way we had it. It was more half and half,
like half and half. Yeah.
And I enjoyed that. He also sent me a picture of his pantry, and he is loaded up.
That is something.
He's ready. He's ready to go. If all the stores close down, he's going to have the Dave Dalton drink for about 20 years here. So I love it. Shout out to Coach. We've got to check in on his Pistons because I'm sure he's not listening to me right now. He's watching the Pistons. You guys can catch up on the game. You'll be able to catch up if you're listening. Don't worry, you'll be able to catch up.
And
afterwards.
He's enjoying that one of those drinks.
He's got to. It's going to expire. He's got to drink that drink here. But yeah, while he's enjoying a Dave Dalton, he's apparently enjoying quite a performance by Karis LeVert. I see he is the only Piston in double figures. He has
LeVert?
10 points of the 26 for the Pistons right now. And I'm intrigued to see that, and I'm obviously happy to see that. But
Happy, yes.
But one of the things that I remember us talking about throughout the season and headed into the playoffs was that I thought on any given night there were about, I mean, it's almost close to the entire roster that could have a night that if you called their number, this is the type of team that it might not have those multiple stars at the top of the team. But once you get into the depth, you've got opportunities for guys like Tobias Harris, who's played above his season averages and even at his advanced age and playoff past. He's played very well in the playoffs. Karis LeVert hasn't played a whole lot, but he's played better as this matchup against Cleveland apparently has been better for him. And yeah, he's hit 2 threes. He's 4 or 5 from the field. He's got 10 points. And that's got to be a huge, I see Cade. I think Cade has played most, if not all, the minutes. He doesn't, so he's got 10 minutes. So he's been able to take a break, but I would imagine LeVert playing so well gives a little bit of a break there
Has to.
for Cade, because one of the, not that we want to focus on the injuries or the one player that's not there, but I would have been excited to see what Kevin Huerter would have done in this series, because I think his secondary
Absolutely.
ball handling and how well he was kind of coming on with that shooting would have been nice, but it looks like LeVert's kind of providing that on this particular night, because I think Tobias was actually the leading scorer before he hit the bench, and then LeVert came out there and he came out gunning. So that's to a good start there, and I think it's been the James Harden show on the other side.
Yeah, it looks like it.
He's hit 3 threes. I would bet on at least 2 of those being step back threes if I know my James Harden mixtapes here.
You just want to shave that beard every time you see it? You just wish you could get that man alone with a razor and shave that beard.
How does he eat or drink anything?
With
I don't
a
understand.
straw.
Yeah,
it's got to be with a straw.
Well, it's funny. Now we're going to go into James Harden hot takes, but because what I was going to say is, and this is going to be classified as a hot take and all of that. It's not even supposed to be. He's my least favorite player to watch in the NBA. He just, the way his style of play, he's very good. He's a Hall of Famer. I should preface this whole take by that. It's not any disrespect to him at all. His style of play, it's just so, he's smart. He is very smart how he plays, and I am impressed by that. I'm impressed with what he's been able to do with that athletic profile. It's very impressive, and with that beard likely weighing him down with whatever's inside there too, because you've got that
Snacks.
part of it. Yeah,
think of the stuff that he
that's why he's so good.
Yeah.
That's he could just pull out a snack
He's got
mid
those
the game.
the Gatorade bars he pulls out.
Yeah.
From the beard.
Yeah, exactly. It's like what is he eating? He's actually in the front row eating. He's supposed to be in the game, and he's eating a snack bar here. He's eating trail mix that he found in his beard, but yeah, he is impressive, and especially at this age, he's aged pretty well as far as the game has gone, because he's not using.
No,
he's not using.
The man's
his
never played defense in his life.
No,
so of course he can play at 38 years old.
Yeah, he's just never a guy that because there's a lot of guys that it's like, man, they're the nuance to their game or their athleticism or whatever. There's a lot of guys that, I mean, it's like, I've never been a big LeBron fan, but like, he's an impressive player to watch. Yeah. The things that he's able to do are very impressive. Whereas Harden's like that, but in a totally different way. It's impressive what he's been able to do with what he's got. But yeah, it'll be interesting to watch him, especially as the series goes on, because if this does become a longer series, all the attention's going to be on Mr. Harden here and his beard, and if Jeff was able to kidnap him, and because now this is out there too. This is out there, so then you're going to be now the.
I'm not the only one. There's people out there that want to shave that man's beard.
Yeah, you would be like 50th on the list. There would be a lot of suspects though. The jail would be, the local precinct would be full of different people like interviewing. Oh, you're a suspect in this case. I heard you wanted to shave James Harden's beard. Nobody would recognize him either. If somebody shaved his beard, he would try to get into the arena. This might be a good strategy. If he does play well, then you shave his beard, and then for Game 5, when he tries to get into LCA, they're going to go, sorry, sir, you need to buy a ticket to get in. And they'll go, I'm James Harden. And they'll go, no, you're not. You can't get in.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, so there we go.
That.
We see.
Before Game 5, let's find James Harden and shave his beard.
This is a good plan. So this is our contingency plan. They've taken the lead, so now we're more likely to have to do this because Cleveland's in the lead. Now that we're talking about taking his beard, so maybe we shouldn't talk about it anymore. So we'll take a break.
It's like Samson.
Yeah,
he loses his power. You shave his beard.
Exactly. I thought it was Samsonite. I was way off. But
Samsonite. Oh my God.
but we'll take a quick break because clearly we're loopy from the Dave Dalton drink.
It's that dang Dr. Pepper and banana strawberry.
Yeah. So stick with us. You're listening to Sports Intel on Jethro FM. We'll talk about them today, which was nice. A big event for them. Want to thank our guest, Lance Parrish, who did a great job at that event. Had a great insights. We'll have to have him back on when he's available. Zach Serdenik, great stuff on the minor leagues there, the play-by-play guy for Erie. And then Sean Murphy with the Pistons, talking some Pistons who are still ongoing. Hopefully we can catch up on this game. But before we get back to the Pistons, Jeff, so I was actually at the clinching game for the Griffins. So we still got hockey going on. So pay attention. I don't know whether it's Conrad's show. I think on Steve's show on the Sports Project, they have some Winning Wednesday tickets to give away for the Griffins. So pay attention because we got some good playoff hockey going on. I also wanted to mention, I thought this was interesting when you brought this up because I'm actually trying to get a friend of the show, Keith Gave, on to talk about this very subject because he's been very passionate about adding women's hockey into the mix, mainly at the college level. But this was our entire interview the last time. He's written the Russian 5 book, the Grind Line book. He's written a lot of the primary Red Wings books here that are on the market. But he wrote one about the Olympic team that upset the Canadian team, the women's team back in '98, I believe it was. And so he's been passionate about adding the women's teams to the mix. And it was a big announcement here recently that they did the PWHL, I believe it's called, team for Detroit. So now we got the WNBA coming back, which I'm excited about because I was a big Shock fan back in the day. But I liked your idea, Jeff, that we have to name the team, that hopefully we'll get the opportunity like Utah. I'm still mad they're not called the Yetis. Can we put that in the mix for the Detroit team? Can we steal the Yeti? I know they're not here, but are they anywhere? I mean, it's cold.
No, I don't believe they're.
Yeah.
No.
What do we have any name submissions here? Early name submissions. We gotta brainstorm. Always seems to be something with. Obviously, car stuff goes well. You got to think
Motor City.
Yeah.
I don't know. That could be interesting.
I still like the Yeti. How about the Sasquatches? That wouldn't be good for women.
No.
That's not good. We need that for men.
Oh, man.
We need that for a male team. So we need a new male team.
I know they've done well with season ticket holders. I think they've sold, they've had 6,000 already sold for the season ticket.
I believe it. I'm excited
I think
about
they're going to do really well. I think it's fantastic, and it's just something else at the Little Caesars Arena. I think it's fantastic.
We were talking about this a little bit with Lance, but one of the main parts of this new complex is the softball field there, and it's great that because all this is about opportunities. We're talking about the opportunities of the guys being able to play on that baseball field, but we need the opportunities for women to be able to play softball, play hockey, play these things at a young age so that they can make now what is the major leagues. They have the major leagues for hockey, and that's great. Now all the hockey fans here, I have friends that their kids, that their little girls play hockey and all of that. So it's cool that they've got the representation now at the major league level here. We just got we got to think they got to nail the name. They got to have a cool name, and I think they're going to have a cool name. I just don't know what I like the mythical names. That's why I want, but we need somebody else. The Yeti and the Sasquatches, that's got to be reserved for a male team because that's not good. We need like an elegant, cool name for the women's
The
team.
Yeti-ettes?
That's good. There we go. That was, at least we made them female. It's got to be, that seems to be a popular one here. I like that. We'll have to ask Keith, because Keith, in his book The Grind Line, he talks about all the names of the lines, all the best names for lines across time. And so I feel like he'd be a good one to brainstorm this name. I feel like this would not be the first time he's thought about this. I feel like if we ask him,
I'm sure he's got it.
So we're going to talk to him hopefully at some point. But the Pistons are, let's see, they're tied here. LeVert has 12 points. This is amazing. How well he's doing.
I can't wait to get my son's reaction.
On LeVert?
Yes.
Is he a big LeVert fan?
No, he's not.
Oh, he's not. Well,
No,
I think there's a lot of those in the market in general that are not high on LeVert, but he is one of those guys. I do believe, and it's not just hope upon hope kind of thing, but I do believe that most of these guys that are on the roster on any given night, we saw this with Paul Reed on Saturday there. He came in and he was ready, and his plus minus and his scoring, he was scoring over a point a minute. His plus minus was unbelievable for the amount of time that he was in there. And I think a lot of these guys are capable of that if given the opportunity. I think if you threw Marcus Sasser out there in the right scenario, he'd be able to really do something. So there's a lot of potential on that bench. LeVert has scored 50 points in a game, in an NBA game. So I mean, he's a capable scorer.
Yep.
He hasn't done it obviously recently, which is what some of the fans are probably yelling at me now. But he's up to 14 points. So
10 early turnovers.
Let's see.
That's kind of ugly
for the Pistons.
For the Pistons, but we are shooting the ball well.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. It looks like Asar has four of those. Yeah, so maybe the secondary ball handling has fallen to LeVert a little bit. And if he's hot, you got to leave him in there, take advantage of those minutes.
8.
He's got 14 points in 10 minutes, so that's an impressive clip there. But I want to make sure to advertise the rest of the lineup here. We got the Sports Project on Wednesday. The Sports Professor is
back. How's Steve feeling?
He's feeling better. He was back on Saturday. Good. He had a good show. I listened to the full show, and he's back and better than ever. So he'll be back for Wednesday, 7 to 9. Obviously, Conrad and Rowdy during the day. Listen to Conrad's show and the Sports Project for those tickets. And then Thursday, we got Shane Graham's Extra Points from 7 to 9. Should be a good show there. We'll talk some lines and some football. And then, then Saturday, we've got Sports Project again, 10 to 12, the original version, Polka Pops and Polka Overtime. And I saw a polka thing recently that I needed to talk to Mike about, but it's not coming to mind. But after that, we've got the All Request show with one Jeff Isaak.
7 to midnight.
That
should be fun.
So when is the 100th show again?
The 100th show is June 27th. We will start registering people Saturday. Saturday will be the first one.
Do you have like a tournament for people to enter to win their way on to the show?
No. I'm just lucky if the phone rings and I get people that want to come and do it.
They'll want to come. This will be fun to have some pizza and do your request live. So
and
be
then
sure to
Thursday
tune into
night
that.
for you, it's schedule release in the NFL, so that'll be fun to talk about
Yeah,
Thursday.
we'll be able to cover that. I just read something on The Athletic that said that the Lions have statistically, obviously I know it's early and people are going to say that, the easiest schedule based on the predicted records of these teams. So we'll see what happens here with the release. But yeah, tune in to all those shows and tune in next week to Sports Intel and the whole Jethro lineup. Until then, stay informed and stay vigilant.